Probably can.
Okay, I call
It is
the
indeed.
Inland Wetlands special meeting agenda for August 7th to order. Just reading this, okay. We're gonna start with 185 Grassy Plain Street, and for purposes of this application, I'm gonna sit Danielle and Pat. Is that correct?
Yes, and I understand your eagerness to start the discussion, Mr. Chairman, but before we do that, why don't we all introduce ourselves?
Here we go again. Okay, everybody knows it.
Pat
Sorry.
Sorrell, alternate.
Thank you.
Greg Johnston, Vice Chair.
Pat Fairport, Commissioner.
Danielle Monroe, alternate.
Nico Jordan, Commissioner.
Dave McCollum in the Wetlands agent.
Where's there?
I do have a question. Do we need a recording secretary, or are you acting? Or is
Doing
the
double
video-
duty tonight,
Okay.
and it looks like Kevin is just joining us remotely.
Okay. So let's bring him in.
Good evening, Kevin. Let me know if you can see and hear us okay?
Oh, my hands. Two choices. Actually, got more.
Kevin, let me know if you can see and hear us okay. You are still muted.
Are you in communication with him?
I see that he's joined this meeting remotely.
Okay.
I mean, he's here.
Kevin, you're muted.
Yeah,
Can you
he-
indicate you can hear us?
Oh, hey guys, sorry, I was just connecting my audio.
All right, can you just introduce yourself? We had just started.
Yeah, of course, Kevin Seaman, Inland Wetlands Commissioner.
Great, thank you. Same question. Can I sit both alternates for this?
I mean, I would say you had a commissioner that was here for discussion. It's
Right.
It's up to you if you want to seat them.
They were both here for full all discussion,
Right.
so I
Okay.
could sit.
Yeah, if
Okay.
you want to seat them both, I suppose you can.
All right, I would like to seat them both because they were here for the full
Okay, very good.
information reviews.
Okay, so for the
public hearings.
record,
Yes,
yeah,
Okay.
Patricia Sal, Greg Johnston, Pat Parafort, Danielle Monroe, and Nico Jordan. As you're just as,
Kevin.
And me.
no, you can only have 5.
Oh, you got it.
Oh, that's what I was asking. I only can have 5.
That's correct.
All right.
So when you were discussing this at your previous
Right,
meeting, you
okay,
had
so I
Kevin
will
Seaman,
sit, I will sit on Pat then.
you're seating Pat Sal.
Yeah, and then I have 5.
Okay,
Okay, and that was I should have worded it differently. I'm sorry.
okay,
I wanted to make sure
and
if I could go
you are
five.
seating Pat Sal for Laura Ferguson.
Laura, yes.
Okay, very good.
Okay,
So your voting members are Kevin Seaman,
yes,
Patricia Sal, Greg Johnston, yourself, Pat Parafort, and Nico Jordan.
that is correct.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Thank you.
At the last meeting, you guys had requested me to draft a resolution of approval for this application.
Yes.
I will get it up on the screen for you shortly, Kevin. I'm just handing out a hard.
Excellent. That's okay. Yeah, if you don't mind doing the
No,
good
I will
old
do
Star
the-
Wars scroll.
I will do the Star Wars scroll.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, so I'll give you all a chance to read this. And then when everybody's ready, we can go through discussions of this, okay? Okay, Kevin, can you see what's on the screen?
Yep, and it's clear for me too, size wise and everything. So I'm good.
Okay, because I can zoom in on this, no problem if you need.
I'm okay. I don't think there's anyone else on here, right? Visually, I'm the only one. Go figure.
Yes, it is just you on here tonight.
That's okay. My apologies. I'm trying to get my
No,
life
that's
together
okay.
for Vermont.
No,
That's
that's fine.
okay. How's this scroll speed?
We're fine. I'm good.
Okay.
Okay. I completed reading it whenever needed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hold on, I have to read.
While everybody else finishes up reading, Kevin, is there any section that you want me to scroll back to for you to reread?
No sections to read. I did notice that under your listing of documents, you had a couple of documents listed twice. Am I to assume that those are just like the secondary iterations of the same document or version?
We'll go through that when everyone is ready, Kevin.
Okay, perfect. That's the only question that came up.
Not a problem.
The last sentence there, David says, comes effective 15 days after publication in News Times. When does that happen?
So
Publication.
as soon as I get the request for the legal notice posting to go out to the News Times, it's the day after. So if not tomorrow, the next day I'll be writing something to the News Times that says, hey, please write such and such that the commission made a decision on this date for this application. It goes in the legals or the whatever that section is called of the newspaper, and it's a procedural thing that has to get done, and it's for the public's reference, and it's for the applicant's reference that they know that the decision got posted. It's a statutorial requirement.
Okay.
Has everybody finished reading this?
Yes, I have.
Okay. My advice to you all before discussion would you'll have to base your decision. I have preemptively put in the decisions that you guys usually use at the end of this draft resolution, reasons 1 through 3. You have your boilerplate conditions, and then there was a final condition, number 8, that discussed a wetlands marker or a placard, excuse me, being placed at a certain location, which was discussed at the last special meeting. As for the exhibits, which is what they're formally called, I do my best to make sure that there aren't any duplicates in here. What will happen is if you're having an exchange between the engineer that's performing our peer review and the applicant's project engineer, they will most likely use the same subjects. And what you're looking for is the date. So if you don't see a different date after what the document's called, then it's a duplicate and I need to fix that. But almost should all have different dates unless you saw one that didn't. And if that's the case, let me know, because I can stare at this 1,000 times and not catch it.
Oh, no, I did not, but I also wasn't looking at it in that kind of detail.
Nope, that's not a problem. That's what I'm here for. The last thing I would have is I would recommend you guys all have the beef of the majority, use the right word, of your discussion before someone makes a motion. And then when someone makes that motion, they're doing it with however many conditions you guys decide to agree upon and the reasons that are listed at the end of this draft resolution of approval. And then if there's any discussion on that motion, just to fine tune a couple things, that's when that would take place. And then you would have your vote. Okay, everybody, does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Okay,
Understood here.
okay, floor is for you guys.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the permit?
I have a question on, hang on, let me find the section here, sorry. So the construction fences, it says, I forgot, I can't find the section. So if they need repair, then the developer has to repair them. So who monitors whether possibly they're they need to be repaired. And it's addressed.
What's that?
If the fences fall down.
It's like the silt fencing.
So, yeah,
Construction. I don't think we have construction fencing.
Right.
Is that Dave?
I'm sorry?
I was gonna say, wouldn't that be you, or don't you go out to check on these?
So this is where you have to look at the maintenance schedule that the applicant provided as part of their site plan sheet set. I can't recall off the top of my head. If they have someone that goes out there to monitor, I would imagine they do. It's pretty standard that that's the case. Otherwise, you're having either Beth or myself give a nastygram out to the site contractor, which we had to do last week because someone wasn't keeping up with their ENS controls and it was pretty alarming.
yeah, it's page 3, number 4.
Let's see
Shall be
here.
maintained and fully functional throughout the construction. And until the site is fully established, commission and or its designated agents reserve the right to require additional erosion control measures.
Are you reading the draft?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Page 3, 4.
right. Right.
So if you get a bad rainstorm and the fences fall down, someone has to monitor. the
Right,
fence.
I'm just making sure I have the. And go to the next one. Maintenance of erosion sedimentation controls. All right, so if you were to, and you guys can pull out the site plan sheets, doesn't really matter which one, because the notes don't change. But on the sediment and erosion control plan, sheet 6, note 2 of the maintenance of erosion sediment controls, it says. Prior to the time of any forecasted rainfall, all erosion and sedimentation controls to be checked and necessary repairs made. So it doesn't specify who the person would be exactly.
Mhm.
But in almost every circumstance, I'm not the one that's going out there to do that repair. It's the contractor that does that. Or whoever is responsible for those controls.
So it doesn't have to be mentioned. It's.
If you guys want that specificity, I suppose you can add it, but it's implied that it's on the applicant and their.
I would say, isn't it course of business, and isn't it like a regulatory standard to have to maintain that?
That's
I
correct.
would, that's just my assumption, because I think that if you double down on writing down every little nuanced detail, but I do agree that it should be enforced. I just don't know if putting it in this contract would be part of the enforcement of it. I think that's what I want to say.
Okay.
So you're asking who enforces it?
Well, it's not even really a question as much as me thinking out loud. I would think that it's regulated to begin with.
If we get a complaint from a neighboring property. That something isn't working the way it should, I go out there, take a look at it, or Beth goes out, takes a look at it. If we notice that something is wrong. We're on the phone with whoever was with us in that pre-construction meeting or their site supervisor to say, hey, we have a problem out there. You need to have somebody fix it.
Okay,
As simple as that.
okay,
Either that or they get a notice of violation and there's a whole process to it.
okay,
By the way,
They get alerted.
they get alerted.
Yeah.
Correct.
okay.
Kevin, you have any discussion?
No discussion points that we haven't really already talked over during the other parts of the meeting, so I'm pretty comfortable with the draft.
Okay, thank you. Pat, anything else?
No, good.
Greg? No, good. I don't have anything. Nico?
Are feasible and prudent alternatives to the site plans. Is that something that we can put as amendments
Excellent question, Nico.
to?
Yeah.
Say, what can we put?
It's an excellent question. And you can only require a feasible and or prudent alternative to be provided when it has been substantiated that there would be a direct impact, a direct adverse impact to a wetland or a water course. In this case, there wasn't any substantial evidence to the contrary that you would have an adverse impact. So you can't require for the applicant to have provided one. Does that make sense?
Isn't the burden of proof on the applicant to show that to prove that there is no adverse impact to the wetlands? No
Well-
significant impact or adverse.
Well, they provided those reports.
Why is it on us to prove that there is? Or
No.
when does it become our responsibility to do so?
So if you wanted to have someone conduct a peer review, you would have requested that before the public hearing opened or during the public or early on in the public hearing process, if there was dialogue that you were having with the applicant where you were asking them questions and they weren't able to answer them, and you had some reasonable doubt that could be substantiated with evidence from an expert to say, hey, you're going to have an adverse impact to this regulated wetland or water course. It's one thing if the applicant shows it explicitly up front, which in this case it wasn't. All their work was in the regulated upland review area, right? So there was no prompt for them to say that they weren't going to have a direct adverse impact because they didn't show any. Does that make sense?
It gets reviewed also, not just by the applicant, but also by our, like, town engineers and
Myself.
Dave as well, who, can look for red flags as well, if they feel that something's being overlooked or purposely not discussed. So they're looking for that.
If there were concerns for direct adverse impact between myself or James or Ryan McAvoy, who is your consulting engineer from SLR, they would have expressed that to you, either verbally or in written form. And I can speak for myself, and I'm sure I can speak for James and from Ryan, but there wasn't anything from either of them to indicate that.
So they do look at it. We don't just take the word of the applicant. Even though the word may be good, we don't just, we have another party looking at it at the same time.
And if you wanted a wetlands scientist to weigh in on that, to have them conduct a peer review, because you had that level of concern that you didn't think myself, Ryan, or James would have addressed, you would have requested them to conduct a peer review and weigh in as to whether or not there was going to be a direct adverse impacts because of this application, then the applicant would have had to address that.
I have just, because these concerns which I voiced already that are persistent.
I
Okay,
can voice them again. That's fine.
I wrote down my talking 1 second.
Go ahead.
Can read this. But
Let us know what your concerns are. Maybe some of the other commission members have the same concerns, or
right.
Kevin, is it okay if I stop sharing the screen so you can see us?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I've been listening along and I know what's going on. I'm not sharing my screen, by the way, because I'm moving around a little bit when I'm not reading, so I don't want you to
As
see
long
the
as-
chaos.
As long as we know you're there and following along,
Yeah.
that's what matters.
100%. Nico, are you stuck on, I'm gonna assume you may be, and I agree to some extent, the air pollution issues that we were discussing about heat
It's an
signatures?
ambient thermal pollution issue.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, and
Not,
given the case on this one that we are where we are, and I'm not projecting an opinion here, but if that's something of good concern, and you do raise a good question, if we come into this situation again as a forward-thinking notion, it might behoove us to have some sort of third-party validation just to gain some, if anything, even if it has no impact on our decision or impact on the wetlands, it's an opportunity to gain knowledge in that area
I totally agree. Yeah.
to
and I
help
think
us
we're-
make better decisions. But the fact of the matter is based on everything that Dave was able to discuss with us. I understand kind of like the handcuffs we're in now, but a peer review in the future for a similar situation might be beneficial, even if it doesn't alter our decision.
Yeah, I don't see how we can make these decisions without a wetland scientist giving a second opinion.
See,
That's what McManus was doing.
right,
I
I
understand.
understand the concern.
I have a
Over.
professional different opinions than Mr. McManus that are my own
Yeah, that,
professional.
hence a
scientific-
third-party peer review request that we would request ourselves.
Applied To the state as a wetland
Right.
scientist or a soil scientist.
So
I don't have letters after my name. I have a BA in humanities,
Right,
but I am a student of all these things.
sure, but
And
he has a certification through an organization recognized by the state of Connecticut.
Yeah.
To practice what he does.
well, he's not here to defend himself, so I don't want to talk about Mr. McManus without.
So I do agree, it's a subject that we could delve into on the next application or that presents like that, or maybe even before another application, educate ourselves a little more on that. My comfort level right now is it's not affecting the wetlands based on the information that I've received. So, I mean, I look at it, all the other applications that have come through. I don't see anything that could be done. I mean, I understand the thermal effect of the heat and everything on the atmosphere, on, you know, surroundings and stuff. I know New York City is what, 8 degrees warmer than the surrounding because of, you know, the concrete and everything.
It is a greater issue.
But it's a greater issue
that starts
that's
at a
over
local-
here, but how's it affecting this wetland?
It
That's
starts
what
at
I'm
a
looking-
local level.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but how's it affecting this one piece of wetland? Is there anything the applicant could do that would change how this wetland is affected? And I don't believe there is. That's my own feeling on it from all the, you know,
The chain that the EPA follows, not to cut you off, sorry,
No.
just to be personally, the chain that the EPA follows is a less direct one than the one I'm thinking of, that, you know, insects and vertebrates and
Mm-hmm. Right.
invertebrates are gonna be affected by an ambient increase in the environmental air temperature of their habitat where they
Okay.
live,
Right.
which I think is true.
okay,
I'd like a wetland scientist to say that
Okay.
also, but I don't have that at the moment. But what the EPA says is that the increased air pollution that is derived from the high temperatures of these heat islands will create excess use of electricity to cool the buildings and people in their cars,
Okay.
which consumes drastically more amounts of
Yeah.
carbon dioxide emitting emissions.
Right.
Now, this is, okay, you follow the
Right,
logic,
right,
it fits.
absolutely.
It's not easy to
Right.
do, it's annoying, but it's true.
I'm not.
And then that will basically lead to, you're gonna say this wetland right here
Right.
on this site. And it's that wetland and all the other ones around.
No, I agree.
It's
I'm not
everything.
looking at it as this applicant to be responsible for global warming. That's what I mean,
It starts at a local level.
no, and I agree, but we can't hold this applicant accountable because icebergs are melting, you know, if, you know, I don't want to get into a whole political discussion that way. You know, but I think we can, you know, look into educating ourselves more on that type of, you know, thermal emissions for stuff like this, so we know more going forward. And how it would affect the way I feel right now, you know, from the testimony I heard. And from past testimonies I've heard, because this subject come up before, that it's not affecting it. Now, if water was running into the wetlands or anything like that, absolutely. But it's not, you know, affecting it. So on a global level, yes, it's maybe adding to it, you know, but at the same time, how's it affecting this one piece of wetland? I can't, you know, draw a correlation to that.
But
I
wait.
would like to argue on Nico's side, but I would also like to put it into a perspective that might help the group. It's like at some level individuals are going to need to become responsible for some sort of larger impact that it's going to have. But the thing is, in this particular case, the liability and burden of proof can't fall on an individual that's done everything within the stipulations we provided them to ensure that the wetlands is safe from
Within the
impact.
regulations.
So I think, yeah, exactly. So I think it's our duty then to learn more, advocate for ourselves, and then begin. If we find that it is something that is necessary, we have to begin an implementation of some sort of regulation for exactly what you're talking about, Nico. It's just, but it's not the ability to hold one individual accountable without any prerequisite or pre-stipulation that they weren't being held accountable for.
Right.
It's kind of, we're past that time frame, so that's the only thing. But I agree that we should educate ourselves, and we should definitely, if we find it's worthwhile, make steps towards some sort of implementation of that knowledge. But the liability can't fall on this individual is what I'm getting at. That's like pointing a finger at everyone there for driving a car and getting emissions, even though they bought it legally, and they didn't, and at the time of purchase of their vehicle, they weren't being held accountable for a standard that others weren't.
But since it's not written in our regulations yet, we can't hold this applicant responsible for this strict
That's where I'm going.
Bill,
of the rules. So
all right,
where do I stand? Because I still believe,
all right.
I mean,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, let me just give some food for thought and weigh it on. Where does your scope of authority come from? First off,
state,
the state of Connecticut.
someone told.
Okay. As much as you can acknowledge what the Environmental Protection Agency is and is, I'm certainly not in any position to disagree with what they say, and neither are you, because they're a federal agency and I'm just one small wetlands agent on the very bottom of a small totem pole, comparatively speaking. You can consider what they say, but ultimately, if you're not getting your authority from them, you have to figure where your authority is coming from. And there's a whole section in the beginning of your regs that essentially says what your purposes are. The one that's most pertinent to what Nico was talking about is 1.2.1.e, and I quote, deterring and inhibiting the danger of flood and pollution, which I believe, Nico, is a word that you had looked into the definition for it in the regs. There is a definition for it. And I think I cited this when we last met. And the most important part of that whole definition, it does say, there is an excerpt in there that says harmful thermal effect. But it specifies of any waters of the state or any wetland or water course. It doesn't say anything about air.
That's short-sighted. That's wrong. We need to amend that because a thermal effect does not have to be just water
You're-
that can affect the wetlands. You can have thermal air pollution. Ambient air temperature can affect the habitat and the loss of
Right.
ecosystem,
Right, but
but it's not there. So
right, but these are based on the state of Connecticut's model regulations, okay? If they're not giving you the authority to weigh in on the impacts of air, then I don't know how you would be able to add that into your regulations. You can't just add something to the regs if you don't have the authority to do it.
I mean,
Yeah, the answer is,
I know that thermal pollution
Right,
is
right.
like considered, can come in any form.
Right.
I submitted this all.
Right, and I am not, I don't think anyone is disagreeing that thermal pollution by way of air is not a thing. It very much is.
Right, so the state would agree.
But you also gotta, Nico, I understand you've done a lot of research on it. And that's your education or viewpoint on thermal pollution. I will guarantee you, and I have not done any research on it. I guarantee you, whatever your viewpoint is, I can find another person who feels the other way about it. And that's why these regulations are set as guidelines for us to follow, because those discussions are had to print these up. So if you want to have these changed, it has to be done more on the state level and the, both sided viewpoint discussion, then it comes down. It's not for us to change the regulation or. Yeah, change it for this one application. Because the applicant is going by the guidelines that he was given by the state and by the town on the criteria he has to meet. For us at the 11th hour to say, well, you did everything, but now we got this. You know, that
Mhm.
to me, again, this is good discussion for maybe future, but I mean, in the future, again, let's say we have education on this whole thing, we feel a certain way, we still have to go by what's in print and the guidelines for us.
The other pieces of food for thought that I would give are. What is the scope of the regulated upland review area on this property and what is proposed within it? I could bring up the site plan again, but I'm almost certain you all can recall, just like I can, that most of that larger building that's closest to the wetlands is outside of that regulated upland review area. So the area for where that warmer air that's being impacted by this building, where it's located is outside of the regulated upland review area. So I don't know how you as a commission could readily correlate to something that's outside of where you have jurisdiction in the first place is part of your purview.
Because it's right next to it.
Right,
So,
right,
let me-
but I understood, but that's,
So let me
but
ask you
that's,
this.
but this is where I get to my next thing,
Right.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind me
Oh, please.
continuing. So
Yep.
the next thing that you're looking at is, okay, there's the air element, there's also water. So they have a stormwater management system because they have impervious surface by the way of the building and the parking lot. Where is most of that stormwater going? To a stormwater management system. Okay, good. Where is most of that stormwater management system located? Outside of an upland review area, also good. Okay, where is that water? If in the chance it has to, if the stormwater that system receives exceeds what it can handle, where is it discharging to? Is it going towards the wetlands? No, at least not the one on site. And it's not going directly towards any wetland that's off site. It would be a lengthy chain, and it would have to be a well thought out process for you to say that the water that's coming from either the water that may be thermally affected by either the roof or the parking lot, which goes through all that stormwater management system, and then discharges in the unlikely event that what it handles is the water that goes towards it, it's exceeded and goes out of the stormwater management system, which isn't directly towards a wetland, would somehow have a thermal effect on a wetland that isn't on this property or, you know, close to any upland review area in that area for that matter. I think there was some discussion on that. I think Michelle had talked at length to that point. I think Mr. Johnson had some insightful comments on that as well at the last meeting. It's not to say that we haven't, that you as a commission have not thought this out. This discussion has taken place. And if there was a concern, certainly between the five of you that are weighing in on this decision, some would have brought it up and said, hey, applicant, address this, which is what they did at the last meeting. Unless
The water management's good. We already covered.
right,
But
I agree.
there's not this
Simple.
applicant, but there's been applications in the past that I have disagreed with certain aspects of how water management might have been done. But it fell within the guidelines that we were given by the state. So that's what I had to go by, not my own personal, like, hey, if you did this, you decrease flooding down the road. It goes by the guidelines that the state has given. We can ask, we can ask, like you can ask, can you paint the roof white? No, okay, we asked, we can't make that a requirement because it doesn't follow the guidelines.
We don't have
The authority by the
Guidelines for-
state to do so.
temperature and heat. We have no like heat island. All right, well,
if it's not in the regulations and if it's not a charge that's given to you as a commission by the state, You cannot impose a requirement for that. And furthermore, this would be establishing a new precedent. You know, compared to all of the other applications you as a commissioner have reviewed before, for you to suddenly come out with a requirement like this. For other properties that have comparatively had similar development aspects.
Right. Well, it sounds like the way to address this is better is to go into the regulations and address these there. So that then the applicants can follow those regulations.
Sure.
Yes, you disagree with the regulations, you need to go to the state who make the regulations. And I don't know the whole process to get them changed or anything like that. I'm sure it's a lengthy process and debate, but then it's in the regulations, then they could follow.
Have a question, Jane.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you seen the regulations with these issues coming up? Have you seen them modified as we learn more and go forward, or are they, have you seen them sort of stagnant for the last several years?
I think we're deviating from
True,
the
yeah.
decision discussion a little bit too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
I think it's a topic that's worthy of a discussion in itself.
Mhm.
And certainly we can have that on a future meeting agenda if you guys are so interested. Just as an aside, the wetlands regulations haven't been revised since I've been in this role as your agent. If you feel as a commission that there's some revisions that should be made, that would be a discussion that would be had amongst all of you, to be honest. But I don't think it's right to muddle that up with your
Correct,
rendering a
yes.
decision for this application.
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed. And it is worthy of a future conversation, but that's something we could plan and have next time we're together. I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with talking more about it at another time.
Nico, you have any other concerns that you wish to raise? Or pros or discussion?
no, I just feel like I'm legally bound to vote for the application.
You legally
No,
bound
no.
to vote how you
You-
feel the applicant meets or does not meet the guidelines.
I think they're missing the mark a little bit.
So.
I'm gonna read this to you guys just because I read it and I'm
Please.
reading the record. I apologize. but
No, go ahead.
Based on the numerous government and scientific findings as submitted for the record in the public hearing of this application, which state that the elevated ambient temperatures generated from the expansive areas of impervious surfaces associated with the proposed development will have adverse impacts on the surrounding wetlands, habitats, and environments. And furthermore, that the applicant has not sufficiently proven that these thermal pollution effects will not have a significant adverse impact on the on-site and neighboring wetlands, I must vote to deny the application. My considerations for decision are in accordance with section 4.4.3 of the Town of Bethel, Connecticut Inland Wetland Watercourse Regulations and are as follows. Pursuant to subsection F, the commission is to consider, quote, the character and degree of injury to or interference with safety, health, or the reasonable use of property, including abutting or downstream property, which would be caused or threatened by the proposed activity or the creation of conditions which may do so. According to subsection H, the commission is to consider, quote, measures which would mitigate the impact of any aspect of the proposed regulated activity. Such measures include, but are not limited to, actions which would avoid adverse impacts or lessen impacts to wetlands and watercourses, and which would be feasibly carried out by the applicant to promote public health and safety. And under subsection C, which states the commission is to consider, quote, alternative to the proposed action, including a consideration of alternatives which might enhance environmental quality or have a less detrimental effect, and which could feasibly attain the basic objectives of the activity proposed in the application. This consideration should include, but is not limited to, the alternative of requiring actions of different nature, which would provide similar benefits with different environmental impacts. So I reviewed those as the considerations of decision for me, based on section 4.4.4.a of the Town of Bethel, Connecticut Inland Wetlands Regulations, which states under considerations for decision that a permit shall not be issued unless the commission finds on the basis of the record that a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist. A feasible alternative is one that is able to be constructed or implemented consistent with sound engineering principles, according to the Connecticut General Statutes 22A-38. As suggested in the previous meeting, the feasible and prudent alternatives of either a, quote, green, grass, or planted roof, or at the very least a white colored roof, were discussed and presumably dismissed. or not, I don't know. Additionally proposed was the planting at regular intervals of species of large native shade trees, pin oak and red maple in this case, surrounded with pervious surface materials extended to the circumference of the mature spread of the tree. Such low impact development strategies outlined above would help to mitigate the ambient thermal pollution created by the proposed site development by reflecting the sun's energy with the roof and by maintaining the same number of parking spaces while simultaneously providing for the water infiltration and nutrient uptake around the mature trees, thus providing the possibility of these mature trees one day to do their job to shade and cool the environment. Nicholas Jordan, thank you.
One last thing that I will add.
Please.
You are, as much as your commission focuses on wetlands and water courses, you're not the only commission that focuses on the environment, because there's only a small portion, not to dismiss your guys' role as commissioners. There's only a small portion, comparatively speaking, of Bethel that is in the wetlands or water courses. The rest is all upland or something else to that effect. You have another commission that serves and to some extent has just as much a concern about the environment as you do, and that's the Planning and Zoning Commission. If they had concerns about how trees were planted, where they were planted, what area was around them where they were planted, so on and so forth, they would raise them to the applicant. I don't know if that discussion's taken place for them or not. I don't know if it's something that they would consider in their decision, but if it's not in the regulated upland review area, you're deferring to them to weigh in on those kinds of things. It's in their zoning regulations. I'm not as well versed in them as I am these, because these are much shorter, and B, I'm your agent, and Beth works with the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I don't want, you shouldn't feel like your concerns are being dismissed and that they are invalidated because for one reason or another. The point that I think Mr. Parafort is trying to make, and I think the rest of the commission would agree, is that you have your charges, your scope of authority. You have to make your decision within that scope. If, despite all those things, you still disagree, you have a right to vote as how you wish. And you can persuade the other commissioners or try to compel them to agree with what you're saying, but you know, at the end of the day, they're basing their decisions in the same way that you are, based on what the regulations say.
I feel better about it if I thought that these topics could be brought to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They're out of my purview. Which
Yeah, and I don't see why they wouldn't be or couldn't be. You have to render your decision first. They still have not closed their public hearing. They're waiting to render their decision based on you guys. So once you guys have made your decision, if you still feel so strongly, you can air those comments to them and see what they have to say. Whether or not they, if your comments resonate with them, then they very well could request the applicant to make changes.
So I just want to be clear on that comment. Once it's voted, no matter which way the vote goes or whatever, once it's voted on by us, a commission member from this commission can go to the zoning and voice their pros or cons on an application.
As a person,
As a
Public.
taxpayer,
not as.
not as a commission. Thank you. Okay. Just want to
As
make
a
sure.
concern.
Yeah, I wondered that about that myself, so you can attend as the public.
But you couldn't speak. So you're saying once we vote and have a decision on us, a commission member can go to another land use board if they still have a public
Yeah,
hearing going on
if
as
someone.
a taxpayer.
if
to
someone
voice their
had a-
pros or cons
If
for the
someone had a
application.
concern
Okay.
and we're not speaking as a commissioner or a land use commissioner.
Okay.
If you were focusing comments towards another commission,
Yes. Once it's.
well,
closed.
right,
We're
once,
closed,
once,
okay.
not closed, once you've rendered a decision.
Decision, yes, okay, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Nico, any other comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments, any stipulations that they would like to see added to this permit before we vote? Or to this application?
I'm okay.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Nico, is there any? Okay,
I think it's worth noting
yes.
before you render a vote on this.
Mhm.
That I don't think your comments are falling on deaf ears by the applicant. It would not surprise me if they were already making efforts to amend the site plans to possibly reflect your comment in some way. I will tell you that they have already made an amendment to the site plan for one of the concerns that was previously brought up at the last meeting. Which is, it's, I'll be blunt about it, it's condition 8. They have already indicated to staff, myself and Beth, that they're gonna have that placard on that post. So, this is in here as a formality more than anything else, because you guys requested it to be. And I think it's good that you keep it in there. But you shouldn't feel like your comments aren't being taken seriously. Or that someone isn't acknowledging them. That's probably the better way to say it. So the site plans that the Planning and Zoning Commission has for review, they're in the Google Drive. So you can take a look at them, and if there's something about the trees that I would just advise that you just take a look at those and weigh what the revisions to those may be with respect to what your
Can you send me home
comments
a
are.
copy?
I'm sorry.
Can you send me home?
Sure. Well, no, I might not be able to, because I don't think I have enough copies to do that, to be honest with you.
So I can draw on
You can, I'm sorry.
draw on it.
Well, you
I don't
shouldn't,
know how else to do it.
I would discourage you from drawing on something for the record for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
You mean
Draw,
for your
I just like to
notes?
draw on it. Yeah.
No,
Save a digital copy and draw on anything though.
Never mind.
If it's on the Google Drive, you can download anything,
You
save it,
mean
and
for
then
your
use
notes, not to
it.
hand into, because it's
Use your own variant.
an official document, you're not handing anyone that document, it's just for your own notes to draw on.
No,
It-
it just might be easier for people to understand.
yeah, but if you were to if you were to draw on the site plans, you would be modifying them without the applicant's consent.
They're signed by the applicant.
Not in the original sign. We used to always get copies. We used to get copies of every.
Right, but we don't change them, we don't
Right.
make notations.
All of the copies that the Planning and Zoning Commission receives, they're all copies of the same site plans, but they all have a live seal and signature and such. So, if.
Problems with developer who changes.
Oh, I didn't know that actually. That's something good to know.
Re-sign and redate
Right, that's,
the legal document. So in other words, if you took a document that's signed by someone and make changes to it, you're changing the document after the signature.
Hmm.
That, I mean, if you're gonna make notes for yourself, so be it, but you can't hand someone that document. Because then they think those changes were made and signed by the person who did it.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I'm gonna propose at this point that, from what I'm hearing, the general consensus is that we approve this application, so I will make a motion that we approve the application for 185 Grassy Plain Street, based on, the reasons dictated in the draft resolutions. You gonna let
Okay.
me read them?
No, you don't have to
Okay.
read them.
Okay,
And,
reasons being 1, 2, 3
yeah,
with. And with the provision set forth in the draft.
and how many conditions do we have, Mr. Chairman?
8. Okay,
There's a motion on the floor.
I need a second, if there is one.
Second,
Kevin seconds. All right, so this one, let's make sure we raise hands or,
I would have you do a roll
Roll
call,
call.
Mr. Chairman.
okay. I'll go first. I do vote in favor of this application. I'll go around. Kevin,
I vote in favor of this application.
okay, Pat,
I vote in favor of it.
Great. and Nico.
I'm abstaining.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, so you
So,
got 4 yeses and 1 abstain.
so 4 ayes,
4 ayes,
1 abstention.
1 abstention.
Okay.
So motion carries.
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Very good.
Thank you very much. I'm going.
thank you, sir. Okay. Next on the agenda, new business, 7 Rockwell Road. Notice of violation.
Okay. I was a bit preemptive, I will admit, when I wrote this agenda, because I thought I was going to have either a notice of violation or an order to correct already issued to this property owner. This violation is pursuant to me receiving a complaint from an abutting property owner. And I, of course.
Steve, may I ask where number 7 Rockwell Road is in relation? to
Yeah, I'm gonna get there. I just wanted to show you guys the record. The original complaint itself, which of course I don't have on hand, but I assure you it exists.
That's
Um,
On the tree end of it, right?
So I'm gonna pull up on my screen. I'm gonna use Bethel GIS. Okay.
So just for my information, so I understand all,
Mhm.
at this point, all commission members are allowed to participate, correct? Because we're not in the decision making or public hearing.
Yeah,
Correct?
yeah. Anyone can, yeah.
Just want to make sure I.
So 7 Rockwell. So just for your bearings, this here is Dodging Town Road. This is where, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's the
Church. is it?
Orthodox Church, if I'm getting my designation correct.
Oh, so Newtown's that way.
St. Peter's.
Yes, yes.
All right.
So Newtown would be going east, going in towards this direction here on my cursor.
Mhm.
This right here is Old Hollyville Road,
Okay.
and this right here is Rockwell Road.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay, so the violation is based on this property right here. And the complainant is from this property right here, okay? So they advised me that their neighbor was doing some activities on their property in the form of removing rocks and altering the flow of this section of watercourse, which if I'm recalling correctly is Limekiln Brook.
Mhm.
So I went down there this afternoon to follow up with the photos that they had given me as part of their complaints. It should be noted that with the rainfall that we had this morning, this is not your typical volume of flow for this stream. This is pretty high. So don't focus on the volume of water as much as what's going on the banks for each of its sides, okay? So my vantage point is from 4 Old Holyville Road. I'm looking at the back of 7 Rockwell Road. This is one of the structures on that property. Okay, so Limekiln brook is flowing to the north, here in the section of the photo. What the complaint alleges is that the property owner here has been taking rocks out of this section of watercourse that's along his property and essentially using them to shore the banks on his side of that watercourse. This is just one photo. In fact, I think this is the widescreen photo I took. Part of the complaints allegations are that the property owner for where this activity is taking place is trying to construct a footbridge of some kinds, and the eventual intent would be to have this reinforced so that way you have rocks underneath both sides here. These are some of the complainants' photos, which are smaller and harder to see. Trying to find a good photo. This is I would say a finished area for where this activity has taken place. So this would all be just exposed soil with vegetation. They've essentially taken all the rocks out of this area and used them to shore up this side here. I would interpret this as, you know, not excavating with a machine, but you're altering the flow of a water course without an approval to do so. And I would interpret this as you need an approval to do something to that effect. This is just one small area that is the most noticeable, even with this high flow of water. I would imagine when the flow of water recedes a bit, this work will be more exposed, so you can actually see where the stream bed is and you know where it used to flow with respect to what has been done since this work started. If that makes any sense. This is just the downstream shot, so you can see it's difficult again with the volume of water, but this is the complainants bank of Loncombe Brook, and this is the complaints side of the water course. It's hard to tell, but there are more rocks exposed ultimately exposed on this side than there are on this one. So it's pretty obvious to see that there's activity going on here. My intent would be for me to issue a notice of violation and to have the property owner for which this complaint is addressed, either get back to me within a period of 30 days to let me know what's going on, or if they choose not to do that, they get them to come before you for a show cause hearing. And to demonstrate why they should be allowed to continue to do what they're doing without a permit, or for you to ultimately say, hey, this is a violation because you're conducting a regulated activity without a permit. Give us an application, come in here with the requirement documents that you need to do this kind of work, and then we can render a decision for whether or not you're allowed to A, keep what you have, and B, continue the improvements you want to make.
Do you need a motion for this or this information?
This is just advisory at this point.
Okay.
The only other motions that you'll need, I think you only need two more, and that's for another item that's coming up in new business and just to close. So that's all I have at this time on Rockwell Road. I imagine for our next meeting, which is something else I need to you'll need to discuss.
Good.
Which would happen on September 25th. That I would have more information for you then.
Okay.
Any other
Okay.
questions?
We don't have another meeting in August?
So your regular meeting for August is scheduled next week. I don't see any business that would where you would need to be there.
Would we cancel that now or we're gonna wait till like 3 days before?
If you want to cancel it now, you certainly can.
Anyone against canceling next week's meeting?
No, works for me. It'd be nice to have a week off.
Do you need a motion?
I should have a motion for that, yes.
I make a motion that we cancel August 14th meeting,
The regular meeting.
regular meeting.
Second.
I second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Again,
Aye.
abstain. Kevin, just be clear, you're in favor of it being canceled?
Kevin Seaman in favor of it being canceled.
Thank you. I stepped on you, that's why, so.
That's okay.
Wording was good. Okay. Inland Wetland Commission special meeting minutes from 7:31 and make a motion that we approve as written.
I second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
A little quick here, just give me a second to catch up.
Okay,
It's down. Okay. I'll take that one as a 5-0. That one's a 4-1. Okay, and then the cancel. You made the motion for that,
yes,
Pat,
yes.
and Kevin Stevens seconded that.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'm all set.
I don't know where you are.
I was at the invoice. This was another placeholder I left on here. Because
Do we have the invoice?
technically you don't need it because I believe this is a bill you've already paid.
Okay, good, then we don't do the invoice. Perfect. Report.
Okay, this looks rather lengthy, but 4 of these 5 things are essentially the same. I have been a bad in the wetlands agent in the fact that I have not been keeping up with these. Because I get notices for these just about every month. So the first of these, which is 10 Copper Square Drive, dates back to April. The most recent, I believe, being 61 Rockwell Road, which just came in last month. And they're essentially all for the same thing. You have an expert that comes in and they apply either a pesticide or an algicide to a water body. They have to get DEEP's approval for that. You don't need to weigh in anything on it. It's just a courtesy that they notify myself and therefore you that they got the approval for that. So I'm notifying you that those 4 permits were granted by DEEP. And that they're okay to do that work.
Okay.
The last thing would be, I was informally asked by one of the commissioners,
Me.
well, okay, that as to what was going on with 49 Plum Trees Road.
Incorrect. I don't want to know what's going on with 40. I would like to know if there's a wetland map or if that property's been marked for wetlands.
There is not a wetlands map that encompasses the entire property.
Okay.
I mentioned in my memorandum that this is the same property where you guys approved the Bergstrom well water treatment facility earlier this year. It's hard to.
Yeah.
That's considered part of the same.
Yeah,
property?
so I'm gonna
Okay.
bring that up here on the screen, because it's a pretty massive parcel, and I think it's. worth you
Well, it's
guys
all the
getting
same
some
parcel.
context.
I didn't think it was either.
Just
You-
how big this parcel
Way
is. Kevin, can you see our my screen?
Yep, it's up. It's up.
So this right here is Plum Trees Road. This doesn't show the correct alignment for this intersection, but this right here is Walnut Hill Road. And this is Willsey Drive, or what should be Willsey Drive going up to the high school and or the public schools complex, if I'm getting that correct. This right here is the driveway to O'Rourke Field and Freebrand Field, which is what you guys went down to, where the water treatment facility that was proposed is located. It's right back in this area here. the police department is this structure right here where my cursor is. I'll
Okay.
zoom in on it for
Yep.
it. So this is a pretty large property. There are wetlands which are shown here in green that take up a significant chunk of it. But the only part of the property that was surveyed for wetlands was up in this area because that's where you had the application where there were regulated activities.
Okay.
It's worth just, it's worth for you guys to just know that the distance approximately from where this wetland is, this is just a rough
Mhm.
delineation of that wetland because we haven't had this area of the property demarcated by a professional soil scientist. Your distance here is about 200 feet.
Okay.
Okay.
So. Because of this property and the amount of attention it got to flooding. And
Right.
plains from whatever reason it was,
Right?
if something is to go on that piece of property. I would like to see in front of the wetland board,
Well,
because all of a sudden I don't want to hear it's all dry piece of property now. And again, I don't know what would go there. The whole, whatever, I have no idea, but I would like to see that because the amount of pipe that
Well,
was
at-
to demolish a building because it floods. I would like to make sure it.
At the very least,
Comes in front of this commission.
that application would come before you
Yeah.
because you would have to issue what's called a declaratory ruling. And that would be for you to say that there's no
Right,
activities that are regulated by you that would take place, that would warrant your review. Unless they flag that area of the
Yeah.
property and show that there are wetlands within
Yeah.
100 feet of where they want to do work, which I don't want to say is not possible, because
I just,
I know just as
Yeah.
much as you as to what
exactly,
the
and that's
ultimate
why
plans.
before it may be sit there for 40, 50 years, what, I don't know, just, I like to. Before anything gets started with it, I like to get on the record that it should be in front of this commission
Right.
before.
Right.
It may be something great, it may not be, I don't know, I just,
If,
with all the controversy that's been around that flooding.
Right.
I want.
so there are two things that, or there are two elements that you should just be aware of. The first of which is the locations for flood hazard zones.
Right.
I have them up on my screen here now. So these are the flood hazard areas for this property as of when FEMA last demarcated this in 2010. I think this is what this is showing here.
Okay.
And if you were
Is
to do,
can you clarify what is the blue or the red?
it's the orange, it's the blue, and it's this dash line here. Those
Red
are
is the
all
property line.
specific flood zone area types.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I don't know what the distinction between one of them is, but essentially the fact that you have.
Anything that's any of those colors is within some sort of a flood risk.
Correct,
Thank you.
correct. With that being said, if there's any work that's going to take place within this area, it's not denied, or it's not impossible outright.
Oh, no. I'm
You
not
would just
saying
have to, the engineer would just have to provide for what's called compensatory storage.
Yep.
And that is where you are not compromising the flood storage capacity
Mhm.
of that flood area in any way.
Right.
So,
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it does flood or doesn't flood. I know when something goes on, like, trying to build a new building things can get. Stretched, the facts get stretched or they may not get stretched. So even before anything gets done, I like to know what the facts are before anyone. It may be a non-controversial thing going in there, or it may be a controversial. This way, it's asked for beforehand. We know what it is beforehand, so we stay away from the whole.
well,
They said this, you said that.
Well, question, if it's outside of our purview or if it doesn't come in front of us, it would still have to go in front of planning and zoning, correct? So we can still weigh in on that level if necessary.
yeah,
Yeah.
correct. And like I was saying before, regardless of
Right.
what development is proposed or where it's proposed for that matter, it will still have to come before this commission.
Right.
On the basis that there are wetlands on this property.
Right. And again, I just want to make sure we see it, that's all.
So you will see it.
Perfect.
I don't know. I know as much as you as in
Exactly.
terms of what's proposed there or what the ultimate plans for that
I
property
don't
are.
even know if anything is proposed,
And,
just, you
and
know.
right now, the only phase where we are is the town's demolishing the building. And they're removing any sign that there was a building that was there. And once all of that equipment and all that excess material is gone, that's gonna revert back to grass for however long.
Yep.
That property remains undeveloped.
Meet bittersweet
Well, I would hope
and autumn olive.
there aren't any invasive
I
species that get
would hope
established
so
there.
too.
But
We'll bring some kudzu up. Second.
yeah, kudzu or mile a minute vine. or
Mugwort.
Mugwort, oh god, mugwort's the worst. That's all I have on the agenda. And I would say that we can't add anything else because this is a special meeting, so.
Okay, I make a motion that we adjourn this special meeting for August 7th. Second. Nico seconded, all those in favor, say by say aye.
I
Aye.
And abstain. Aye, period.
Okay,
Thank you.
good night, Kevin.
Nico, thank you for.
Have a good night, guys.